Mr. Chair.
Jenny Salesa.
Oh, very good choice.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this call on the Organised Crime Anti-Corruption Legislation Bill. Strengthening our laws to combat organised crime and corruption is a worthy aim, Mr. Chair. This bill will allow us to meet a number of our international obligations and enhance our compliance with various international treaties and conventions so we could better assist international efforts on corruption, on bribery and the activities of organised crime. Mr. Chair, Part 2, Subpart 7 amends the Income Tax Act 2007 of the bill, and it seeks to ensure that bribes are not tax deductible. Clause 51 of the bill is designed to make taxation legislation more consistent with criminal legislation, and it replaces section DB45 with a new section that denies deductions for bribes. The intention of this clause, Mr. Chair, is to make it clear that no bribe payments can be tax deductible, whether they be bribes paid through intermediaries, bribes paid for the purpose of obtaining an advantage for a third party, or bribes paid to foreign public officials for acts or omissions in relation to the performance of official duties. Mr. Chair, this amendment is another of those contained in this bill that will enhance our compliance with OECD Anti-Bribery Convention and the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. However, in contrast, the Crimes Act amendments in Part 1 had a number of authoritative contrary submissions during Select Committee, Mr. Chair, because Part 1 actually permits facilitation payments. Mr. Chair, bribes paid to foreign public officials for the sole or primary purpose of ensuring or expediting their performance of a routine government action where the value of it has no undue benefit or disadvantage seems to be A-OK, but there will be no tax breaks allowed. Well, clearly, Mr. Chair, such payments are not legitimate business expense. Of course, we would not be advocating that we should resolve this inconsistent approach by allowing payments to grease the proverbial wheels to become tax deductible. No, Mr. Chair, I'm merely pointing out that Part 2 in this respect is not consistent with facilitation payments allowed in Part 1. Rather, the question for the Minister is, shouldn't we be following the strong taxation approach and saying bribery is not acceptable? A genuinely hardline approach by this government, Mr. Chair, against corruption would be most welcome in this bill. We are now slipping in the ranks of least corrupt countries in the world. In recent years, we have seen a lessening of transparency from this government. The government arrogantly continues to look after themselves and the privileged few at the expense of everyday hard-working New Zealanders. Their no rules apply to me approach was revealed in detail in Nikki Haga's Dirty Politics book. The implications of a concerted campaign to undermine regulators like the Series Office and the Financial Market Authority cuts deep to the heart of the integrity of our financial system. Public servants and many people from both sides of the House, Mr. Chair, have worked hard to clean up the mess from the finance company collapses and have attempted to restore some faith so that the public can invest with confidence again. Mr. Chair, we support Clause 51 in Part 2 of this bill because it clarifies that bribes are not tax deductible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.